In this video, we're going to talk about the use of texture in our website designs. Now, the idea of texture is not something you're going to apply to every design you come across. You're not going to texturize every single web design that you create. But there are times when it would be appropriate to use texture to really make your web design stand out. If you wanted to give it some kind of weathered look or some kind of nostalgic look, you can apply texture to your design in order to really make it stand out, in order to make it look really interesting, and in order to evoke some sort of emotion or reaction to the design. And you'll see a lot of websites out there these days that have some kind of weathering texture applied to it. But this doesn't just apply to weathering, although that's kind of the most common use of texture these days. It can also apply to any kind of metallic texture, any kind of texture you can think of. So this is going to be a real short discussion, since this isn't necessarily something that you're going to do with every design, but I do want to look at a few examples of the types of textures you might apply to your web designs. So I'm going to jump into a browser window, and the first example we're looking at here has kind of a watercolor texture to it. And you can see how this particular design just wouldn't work the same if it didn't have that texture applied to it. If we maybe just had a picture of some mountains and trees and things like that, but didn't have this texture, it wouldn't be quite the same. This texture really does bring a certain feel to the website, and as we scroll down we can see that it has some similar textures as we scroll down, some similar watercolor type textures throughout the website. So this is one great example of a website that uses texture in order to make the design more interesting, more appealing. Here's another web design example. It's not necessarily a watercolor texture, but up at the top it kind of looks like sandpaper a little bit. And as we scroll down, we just see different types of texture. Some of these tabs here look like the tabs that you would see on the back of a pair of jeans or something like that. So you can see that not only the background and things like that, but also some of the text has been weathered, and a lot of texture has been added to this website to make it look very, very interesting. And the texture itself won't always blend in with the content. In other words, you're looking here at a website for a church, and all of this textured content here doesn't necessarily go along with the content of the website, but it might go along with some emotions that they're trying to inspire, or they might be appealing to a certain type of audience. And in a day when most kids clothing comes already weathered, you buy these jeans from different stores that are already weathered, that look like they've already been worn for several years. That type of texture is really appealing to the younger crowd, and so this church website might be trying to appeal to that same type of crowd by using these weathered textures in their website. Okay, we can look at another example here of a wooden texture that's been applied to this website, and all throughout the background of the website you see this wooden texture applied, and even at the top here you see it looks like some carvings have been made into the wood. So there's just another simple example of how to use texture. Now you'll notice the entire website doesn't consist of textured elements. In fact, the texture of all the content is really quite glossy. So the glossy content kind of contrasts with the texture behind it, and it gives it kind of a neat feel to it. And I like the way that works. We have another website here that just looks like most of it was drawn with, pen and paper. And you'll see a lot of site designs like this. And there's really not much else to say about it that we haven't said already, but this is just another good example. This design actually blends in that textured feel with an actual photograph. And part of this photograph, we can actually see the colors that were originally there and things like that, but it kind of blends into this hand-drawn textured effect, which is kind of a neat effect. And then one more example, Gary Lieb is an illustrator, and this is a great example of how the texture itself blends in with what the website is about. This guy does sketchbooks, paintings, comics, illustrations, things like that. And so you might expect to see some kind of texture like this to the website, where it looks like we have some pieces of paper that are hand drawn, and you can go to the different pages and see some of his illustrations here. But it's all on this backdrop of this very, very attractive, appealing looking textured background. So those are just a few ways that you can work texture into your website. And let me just repeat that the texture itself doesn't necessarily have to match the content of the website. In other words, such as with this church website, the texture doesn't really make you think of church. The sandpaper texture at the top and the jeans tags and things like that doesn't necessarily make you think of church. But the texture itself is evoking some kind of emotion from us that the creators of the website were trying to evoke. It's appealing to a certain audience that finds this type of design appealing or attractive. So you're considering a lot of things when you're talking about adding texture to your website. You're either doing it to appeal to a certain audience, such as in this website, or you're doing it to blend your content in with the design. Such as on Gary Lieb's or Lieb's, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but such as on Gary's website here, where he's an illustrator, he's an artist, so he used the texture of hand-drawn paper to really make his website stand out and to blend in with the content.